Hi and welcome to this new video series for chess.com when we are going to talk about avoidable mistakes, so how to avoid most of the mistakes you make when you play chess. I'm going to use material from my own chess book that I wrote, the chess manual of avoidable mistakes, and we are going to use examples of my own mistakes mostly, just so I can explain you where these mistakes came from, because they mostly came from psychological reasons, and I really believe that you can recognize yourself in these mistakes, and then you can, with my tips, manage to limit your own number of mistakes during your chess games. In this first video, we are going to talk about objectivity during a chess game, how to remain objective from the first to the last move. In the next video, we are going to talk about general reasons for blundering. Then we are going to talk about when to make concrete decisions and concessions. And then I'm going to give you a few tips on how to improve your results and how to work on your chess. So first, how to be objective. Well, there are two big reasons not to be objective. One of them is when you play a very strong opponent and you're not very necessarily confident in what you are doing. And sometimes, well, you are simply outplaying your opponent, but you're still psychologically feeling like you're the worst player. You should not forget that if in one game you're outplaying somebody stronger than you, maybe this player is stronger than you objectively, but in this game he is not. So when you're winning or much better against a stronger player, you should go for a win, and you should not try to limit the risk. You should just play like if you were playing anybody else. So for example, that game of mine was played with black against Arkady Nadic. I'm not going to show it all because we won't have time to see everything, but I had this excellent position with the black pieces. So you can see that I have a nice bishop pair. My opponent has a passed pawn on b5, but it's, not advancing because of my bishop on b6, which is also defending my only weakness on a5. My bishop on e6 is wonderful because it's controlling the squares where the white knight would like to go. And finally, my rook is also perfect because it's occupying the only open file and it's attacking the bishop on c3. Here, rook a3 would have limited the damage for white, but instead, Arkady Nadic played the move rook c1, and he allowed me to win some material by force, playing bishop d4. The bishop is pinned because the rook is hanging. Knight b1, going to e4 would just be worse because of bishop d5, so better play knight to b1. Bishop b3, now I'm just trying to collect these pawns. King d2 was played, so now the rook is protected and my opponent may try to swap the bishops or to take that pawn on a5. I took on f2, which is the best decision. Bishop a5, I'm now winning an exchange. Bishop e3, king e3, rook c1, knight e3, and I got this position where I have a clear extra exchange, and I should be able to win that game if I play some precise moves. But what happened? First of all, I did not try to find a concrete win because I did not believe that somebody like Nadic 27-30 or something is going to allow a concrete win. Secondly, I wanted to limit any risk of losing because these two pawns on a4 and b5 may appear quite dangerous. So what did I do here? I went completely wrong. I took on c3 and took on a4 and played that endgame, which is definitely better for black, but it's just a draw because it's opposite colored bishops, and my opponent just pushed his pawns on dark squares, and it quickly turned out that I'm not able to win the game because the material is too limited. So actually a few moves later, it was a draw. And it was quite a pity because at this moment after knight e3, first of all, of course, the 2 pawns are quite threatening, but it's also not like they're winning immediately. I mean, just a move like bishop c4 would be quite good, for example. So after b6, I can cover the b7 square with bishop a6, just as an example of normal move that I could play. just meaning that there was no reason to lose my objectivity in that game and give the exchange back, because the position is anyway winning or very close to winning for black. And secondly, I should definitely have calculated bishop takes a4, which was actually a forced win, because after knight a4, I'm playing rook a1, attacking both pieces. And after b6, rook a4, b7, it may look like the b pawn is queening because I don't have rook b4, but fortunately I have rook a3 check and then rook b3, and it's game over. So basically, bishop takes a4 would have put an end to the game, and that's definitely something I should have found because I had enough time, and the tactics itself is not very difficult. I mean, bishop a4 and rook a1 is not very difficult, and then the only thing I should see is that the b pawn is not queening, which is not that difficult either. So that's the first example of lack of objectivity you can have during a chess game, wanting to limit the risk. That's also a difference of style between many top players. Some players were making more draws than others because they like to always limit the risk and they don't like to lose games. Usually, if you do not play in this negative spirit of only limiting the risk of losing, you are going to maybe lose a few extra games, but you're going to win much more than you're going to lose. So it is just a matter of calculating what is best for your chess. And when you are pushing for a win, when you're better, whoever your opponent is, you should play the position. You should do what the position is calling for, and you should play for a win. There is another reason for losing objectivity. We tend to, and that's also something we're going to discuss in the next video, that when we start blundering, very often the blunders follow one after another. And the reason is that blundering is okay because one blunder is generally not enough to lose the game. But if you realize that you blunder, then it also affects you psychologically, and you may actually make more blunders. And that game is a perfect example. I was playing with the white pieces this time against Alexander Barnett, who is an American player. It was a Sicilian, so I'm just going through the opening quickly. Knight f6. Just to note that the g7 pawn is not hanging because after rook g8, queen h6, there would be bishop f2, and a fork is coming on g4. But this is all theory. Queen g3, d6, knight c3, so I'm just developing my pieces. And here, instead of the normal knight c6, my opponent played h5, which is a very bad move because after bishop g5, we already have a quite clear domination. h4 is not possible. I'm going to play long castle, and this is already extremely unpleasant for black. And my opponents, well, continued playing a few normal moves, but the problem is the position was already very bad, and now after bishop f4, I'm already attacking two pawns, and these are two quite big threats because d6 is a very important pawn, and g7, when taking on g7 attacks two pieces, is also a very important one. My opponent played king e7 with the idea that if I take on g7, he's going to be able to force a draw, perpetual attack on my queen. So here I did not take on g7, but I took on a6. I took that free pawn. Why? Because now my rook is also attacking d6, and I'm renewing that threat of bishop takes d6 check. So white is already completely winning. My opponent played e5, and I took on g7, which was also very strong because I'm not only attacking the rook, but also the knight, since after queen takes f6, there will be a fork on d5. E takes f4 was played. I took the rook because it's the most heavy piece available for free. Of course, the position is absolutely winning if my opponent plays ba6. Now I'm taking on f6 and then playing knight d5 check. Knight b4 was played, a little bit out of nowhere because it's not like black is threatening anything. I just moved my bishop. Bishop takes f2, which is not very frightening either because it is just one pawn. and I already have a full extra rook. Of course, knight b4 is defending against queen takes f6 because there is another knight defending the d5 square, so I just played h3, and the knight cannot move because of queen takes f6 check. It looks like nothing can happen to white. My opponent gave a check, king b1, and now, since he wanted to bring one more piece into the attack, he had to play rook b8 in order to free his c8 bishop, since he did not want to give another rook. So he played rook b8. I played queen h6, which is fine, because anyway, after bishop e6 next, I would have to play queen h6. My opponent played bishop e6. And now, well, first of all, it would have been the right moment to try to calculate a forced win. After a b4, my opponent's idea was to play rook g8 and try to get my queen to play rook g6 and rook g8. I have so many pieces for the queen that it would anyway not be a draw whatever I do. But I wanted to avoid that. But with a little bit more calculation, I would probably have noticed that after knight d4, actually, my opponent cannot trap my queen, because after rook g6, then I would just take on e6. He has to take with the king, because he would allow queen takes e6. And after king e6, I just go to h8. And if rook g8, then it's again queen f6 check, and it's game over. So just accepting one more gift here, taking the knight on b4 would be very strong. But there are many moves here that would be winning for white, say between +6 and +10. So as I said, accepting the gift on b4 was the best thing to do, but I played rook he1. So I started to lose my objectivity a little bit. I started to think like I have to avoid that, and I have to sacrifice on e3 as fast as possible so that there is no counterplay at all. And here I missed the move knight takes e4, which is definitely not such a big deal, because it is clear that white should still be completely winning. I mean, all of the black pieces are hanging, but at this moment, the blunders as had started. I mean, I considered my own move rook he1 a blunder, and I completely lost objectivity. Now, for example, a good move would have been knight d4, and if my opponent takes on c3 and then plays queen takes c3, after knight f5 check, it's a nice forced mate, since bishop f5 is met with queen takes d6, and king d8 is met with queen f8 and queen takes, and it's going to be a mate. So that would have been one concrete win. I mean, it's only move 20. I had enough time to calculate something like that. And many moves are winning here. Rook takes e3 is winning. Many things. There are again many moves that are between +4 and +8 according to the engine. But instead, I took on b4 now, which is again slightly imprecise. My opponent took on c3, queen takes c3. And at this moment, I started to simply be afraid of everything for no reason. Obviously, now finally my opponent has a deadly threat, which is bishop takes b3. But there are many ways here for white to play. For example, one of them would be to, let's say, take on e3, perhaps give one little check, and then play rook d3. And this is just a full extra piece, and the pawn on e3 is lost. So this is just game over, and this is not very difficult. But at this moment, I started to panic, and I played queen h7, thinking after bishop b3, I'm going to force a queen's exchange, which is in any case not smart, because even after queen takes d3, the position is far less clear than it was a few moves before. But I completely blundered here that my opponent plays bishop a2 check, and I'm getting mated. After king takes a2, it's rook a8, and then mate on a1. So can you believe that this position that was +10 for me a few moves before became a mate in just like 3-4 moves? You can't believe it, because it did happen. Unfortunately, it was one of my games. And the reason was that after things became a little bit less clear, I lost my objectivity, and instead of calculating, started to think, I have to exchange queens. I have to do something not to get mated. And because of that obsession, I lost objectivity and I eventually lost the game. So that means that even if you make one mistake, or even if you were completely winning and suddenly you're a little bit less winning, you should always, after each move, feel like, I mean, you should try to calculate long variations, but every time something wrong happens, you should try to feel like you're starting the game from zero again. So negative emotions do not affect your calculation. So I hope you enjoyed this first video, and I hope you learned something from the few tips I could give you. Do not miss the next 3 videos on the subject of avoidable mistakes, because as I said, there will be 4 in total, and I'm sure there are many more things that you can learn from them. So see you in the next video. Hello again. In this second video, we're going to talk about general reasons for blundering. So there are many reasons for that. One of them is a psychological shock that makes you somehow lose your concentration for the next moves, and sometimes this concentration that you miss may cost you the game. Well, I'm going to show you now one example of game that my opponent could have won immediately. He did not do it, and I was so happy that I blundered anyway the move after. So just to illustrate that, I'm going to show you my game against Emmanuel Bricard that was played a few years ago at the French Championship. So I was black. The opening doesn't matter very much. I mean, black was just fine. The position was about equal. And in that position, my opponent played the move Queen d3, which I did not really, well, I mean, there was no reason to be afraid of it. I could play Queen c7. I could basically play any move. My position is just completely fine. But instead, I completely missed his threat knight g5, and I played the move rook c8. And my opponent started to think. He started to think for actually quite some time, perhaps 20 minutes, 30 minutes, something very long. And I was just walking around, and I was looking at the games, actually, because it was a French championship and some games were broadcasted. And at some point, I looked at my own position, and I thought, who is this idiot who is just allowing knight g5? And it was me, actually. So I thought I had simply lost the game. This is just move 13, and I thought, okay, look, on move 14, I'm going to have to resign that game because after knight g5 is threatening mate, I have to take, and bishop b7, and this is completely lost for black. So I didn't have much hope that I could save the game. And what a surprise that after half an hour, my opponent played rook ac1. I was totally relieved in this position because the game was starting again, and my position here is very good. I can do many things here. I can just protect. I can take on d4 if tactics are working for me. I can do many things, even g6 if I want to, just to avoid knight g5. My position is just great here. But I played bishop c6 to try to get the a4 pawn. I played it quite instantly because I was so happy that I thought the worst had passed and nothing more could happen to me in that game. My opponent played d5, and I took on a4, which was a huge mistake. Rook a1, bishop takes b3, and here I completely overlooked that my opponent did not have to play the automatic move queen takes b3, but could just take on a6, and now my bishop on b3
Every time we say goodbye, they all see that it's a lie. 'Cause we always give it one last try. Yeah, you've watched me break 1,000 times. Now I'm all alone, 'cause you never show. You say you will, but then you don't. That's how it goes. Don't wanna know. I'm turning off my mind so I get by. I just wanna be happy, happy tonight. In the morning, I'ma leave without giving a warning. I'ma leave without giving a. But every time we say goodbye, we all know that it's a lie. Now I'm all alone, 'cause you never show. You say you will, but then you don't. That's how it goes. Don't wanna know. Turning off my mind so I get by. I just wanna be happy, happy tonight. Happier tonight. don't know what you want. Let's have a bit of fun till I downfall. My love, if you feel like I do right now, don't say you're on the run to the other side. My love, you say you wanna try, but you never do. Sugar, there's a reason why we lose.
Then fly to home. But if you wanna travel, then go alone. Yeah, what's the point in us if I never know? Yeah, if you're gonna leave, I'ma let you go. Wait, I'm tired of the pain. Go away. I'm tired of yesterday. Fada, fada. I had my bad days, but it doesn't mean I lost my style. Darling, where were you when my heart was on the ground? I thought time would prove that you would stick around. I guess time stands still, a king without his crown. Now I'm breaking and you're faking, girl. You never made a sound. I'm tired of the close till I get up. Time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever trust. Yeah, no, I don't wanna waste what's left. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll go.
Like you, be strong to hold the powers of the sun. To dream, believe in strength. Now I'm the only one, only one. Until I broke the rules, my life destroyed. A life destroyed. superhero.
never taking whatever you told me. I know what I could be, making emotion paintable answer. Tell me, is this what you made me? Understood. just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up, babe. Tonight we gonna light it up just like the sunrise. We gonna light it up. ocean in my head. I can almost feel you walking in the distance, but I know that it's not reality. If you are echoing around inside these parallel dimensions all alone, know I'll find you in my dreams. I'll find you in my walking in the distance. Find you in my I can almost feel you walking in the distance, but I know that it's not reality. Won't you take me home? Give me wings to fly. We can run away. Castle in the sky. Won't you take me home and give me wings to fly? We can be alone in the castle in the sky. We can run away and leave this world behind. Please just take me home to a castle in the sky. Castle in the sky. Castle in the sky. Won't you take me
I can wait another minute. I can wait another second to be with you for an eternity. I feel like I am in a daydream. Every moment that I spend with you, with you.
Won't you take me home and give me wings to fly? We can be alone in the castle in the sky. We can run away and leave this world behind. Please just take me home to a castle in the sky. Castle in the sky. Castle in the sky. Won't you take me home?
go.
Is trapped. So I actually lost that game twice, and this is just move 17. Now the position is totally lost, and I lost. I played for another 50, 60 moves because I took on c4, I took on d5, I took a few extra pawns. But anyway, the position was lost. So what does it mean? Whenever there is any kind of psychological shock, it can be what happened in that game. That, for example, my opponent missed a clear way to win a piece, I feel relieved and I feel overconfident. This is very bad. I mean, when you start to feel overconfident, try to remember about my first video. Stay objective all the time during your chess games. And when your opponent gives you a second chance, do not waste it by playing fast moves and losing the game a second time, as I did in that game against Emmanuel Brecard. Another kind of example is when you're unsatisfied with your options and you decide to play something quickly because after a long bout, you do not find any good move. That game was played against Zvitan. I was white. That was played in Swiss League. And my opponent just played a good move, knight e4. And actually, I must say that Black does not have any problem in that position. I wanted initially to play queen c2, but after knight g5, and any move, knight g6 or perhaps even g6, Black is just fine. I can sacrifice on e6, but well, actually I can't sacrifice on e6 because this is just losing immediately to queen d5, threatening mate. So I realized that this position is about equal, and I was not very happy with that. I thought for quite some time, and after half an hour being unsatisfied with some lines I was calculating, because of course I was also considering to take on e7, because I have to, this is not a strat, but this is still an exchange I'm not very happy to do, because I have a bishop there, and this pawn is hanging. I was also calculating variations where I sacked the c3 pawn. But anyway, my calculations were all going to the same conclusion, that Black's position was fine. And suddenly I decided in just a second to play queen d3 instead of queen c2. And I thought this is quite smart, because if my opponent takes, now I'm going to have an extra option of queen h3 to attack. And this makes a big difference in the position. So suddenly I thought my move queen d3 was good. And immediately after playing it, my opponent played knight c5. And I realized that I really look like an idiot in that game, because, well, I have to go back with a queen. My opponent takes on b3, takes on f3. I have double pawns, and I'm just slightly worse, or even clearly worse. Fortunately, my opponent was slightly weaker than me, and after queen d1, I offered a draw, and my opponent took it. Still, what is the conclusion of that game? When you're unsatisfied with your options, this is not a reason to reject them all and just play something without thinking, because this is going to bring you a lot of bad surprises. So in this last example, which was actually a very important game for me, that was played against Sebastian Feller at the French Youth Championship. So by then, he was not known as a cheater, as you know that this guy was go cheating in the Conti Montisco Olympiads in 2010. But that game was played much before, and if I had won that game with white, I would be the French champion with one round to go. So it was very important to win. And obviously, my position as white is completely winning. I just have to stop the F pawn and play King E1, and basically then I'm just winning with my other pawns. But what happened is that instead of I had 30 seconds or 35 seconds to play my move, of course with increments, so with an extra 30 seconds coming on the next move. Instead of spending 20 seconds to make sure that King E1 is right, I was so much under pressure that I played here. Well, I wanted to play King E1, and suddenly, when I had 2 seconds, I thought, wow, King E1, Rook A1 check, and then he's pushing his pawn and he's queening. But he's not, of course. I go King F2. This is obviously the idea of going King E1. But I had this hallucination, and with 1 second or 2 seconds on my clock, I played Rook F6, and now the position is a draw. Just, my opponent started Rook B2, attacking B4, and I just cannot defend the pawn. Also, F2 is coming, is going to sacrifice that pawn and take on B4, and then my pawns are too weak. So a few moves later, actually, we just agreed to a draw. So what is the conclusion of that? And I would have more examples, but one of these examples is enough. Try never to get your time go below, let's say, 3, 4, 5 seconds, depending, well, for some people, 3, 4 seconds are enough. For others, 5, 6 seconds. Do not change your move when you have less than this time, because you're going to make a mistake for sure. Obviously, when you're in time trouble, you don't have enough time to calculate everything that you would like to calculate. But still, it is much better to, when you think about the move and you have 10 seconds left on your clock, it is so much better to stick to it rather than think of something totally different and then suddenly play it with 2 seconds. Maybe in 10% of your games, changing your move with 2 seconds is going to bring you a happier result. You're going to play a better move. But trust me, from my experience, that in 90% of the cases, you're going to make an amazing mistake if you change your move after when you have only a few seconds on the clock. So obviously, time management is very important. It is not good to be in time trouble, but you cannot avoid it all the time. Anyway, when you do have a time trouble situation, you should try to handle it in the smartest possible way, play simple moves and play them when you still have time on your clock. Finally, a last reason for blundering is, we already have spoken about it in the first video, that usually when you blunder, you make more blunders after that, or you tend to be very upset with your own mistakes, and then you tend to make more mistakes. That game, there was black against Michal Marin. So that game is obviously a dead draw. It would be a dead draw without that pawn. And what you don't know when you see that position is that a few moves before, I had a full extra piece. Not full extra piece, but a piece for 2 pawns and a winning position. And I was already quite upset to reach that position. I played my moves very quickly because they were, now I'm keeping my G3 pawn. This is really a dead draw. And for some reason, my opponent was declining my draw offers and he wanted to play for a win. And now we reached move 80, so I had to take a new score sheet. And instead of, I had the choice to play my move and take a new score sheet, or first take a new score sheet and play my move. But instead, I just played something without looking at the chessboard, just because I was upset the way the game, I was upset with this situation that I had to play more for a draw, although I had an extra piece during the whole game. And I played the move king f4. I took a new score sheet. I started to write the names again on the second score sheet, and I suddenly realized that I just blundered my g3 pawn in one move. Of course, the position is still a dead draw, but then I behaved simply like a kid, and I played all my moves very fast. And everything was fine up to some point, because I knew that when the king is in the center, or when the king is on a8 on the opposite color compared to the bishop, then there is no way for white to break through. And well, I played some moves. Everything was normal, but I was playing these moves extremely quickly. From 30 seconds, I went up to 10, 15 minutes. I was playing my moves very fast. I was very proud of myself. So there is no win here for white. Bishop c7. I just moved my bishop. Nothing much was happening until here I blundered. I played a horrible move. Instead of playing bishop g3 or bishop h2, because you always have to keep the bishop as far as possible to be able to give checks. For example, when the king comes to b6, I played bishop d6, and after king b6, my position is already lost. I played king 8. I had to play fast just to show off that I'm going to draw that end game. Well, I could have played maybe bishop a3 here. That would be a better defense. But anyway, the position is now, for some reason, theoretically lost. I'm not going to give more details, but let's say that at least after that, I would have been able to fight a little bit more. But here I played instead king a8 at tempo, and my opponent gave a check and played rook d7. And because my bishop is so misplaced on d6, it should be anywhere else, I'm not able to give a check, and well, I'm losing my bishop here and the game. So that was a very painful loss in 105 moves, in a game in which during 70 moves I had an extra piece, and then a dead drawn position for another 34 moves. Obviously a very bad loss, but it is all my fault when things go wrong. So first of all, here it already went wrong because I'm no longer playing for a win but for a draw. But still, this is not a reason to lose your concentration. It is always bad to lose your concentration. And after king f4, which is of course another horrible blunder, again, this is not a reason to lose your concentration. I played a few normal moves because obviously at this moment nothing could happen. I went up to 10-15 minutes on the clock. That was not so bad because, well, it's always good to have time on your clock. But I just behaved, like a kid, just playing my moves at tempo, showing that I was upset, and simply, well, misbehaving to myself, and disrespecting the game in a way that I should simply accept that the destiny of the game would not be the one I wanted before. And, well, if I had focused a little bit more, I would have made a draw. After this move, bishop d6, it was impossible anymore. So the conclusion is, please always stay focused, and please, if you make one mistake, if you're unhappy with the way the game is going, try to breathe a little bit and try to, well, when you make a mistake and you realize about it, try to feel after the next move that the game starts from zero again. Of course, under new circumstances, for example, you were better and suddenly you're worse. But try to in a psychological way, try to set your brain, try to reset your brain, so that you don't make more mistakes and behave like a kid, as I did in that game. So in this second video, we learned a few things that overconfidence can be bad, can be as bad as underconfidence. So, for example, overconfidence in that game when my opponent missed a win on move 14, and actually I gave him another win on move 15. We learned that lack of concentration is a very bad thing. We learned that when you're in time trouble, you should limit the damage by not playing any move when you have less than 5 seconds, also because then you may simply forget Now I have no time to show that example, but I do have examples of games when after 5 minutes, when below 5 seconds, I just could not remember my move and I played something random. Below 5 seconds is really a difficult challenge. So try never to reach such a low time on your clock. Try to manage your time trouble in the most clever way possible with simple moves, and do not change your moves when you have just a few seconds on your clock. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this second video, and see you very soon for the third one. Hi, and welcome to this third video of my series on avoidable mistakes. And in this third video, we're going to talk about the right moment in chess to make a concrete decision or concession, because it is very it is not very usual that you can just win a game, just playing normal moves and waiting for the mistakes of your opponents. Usually, you really have to catch the moment when you should, let's say, bring the coup de grace, as we say in French, to your opponent. And there is very often in a game of chess a moment when, if you want to concretize your advantage, you should be ready to make a concession and to perhaps give away some of your position assets to get some other assets, and to improve and to make progress until you get the full point. So first, I'm going for once to show you a good example of my games with a nice victory against the very experienced Grandmaster Artur Yusupov. That game was played in Swiss League many years ago. I was white, so it was some sort of Queen's Gambit, so I'm just playing the opening quite fast. Here, my opponent probably played d takes c4 a little bit too quickly, because black usually waits for the bishop to develop to then take on c4 and force bishop takes on c4 again. Obviously, my opponent took on c4 because he thought otherwise I'm going to take on d5. So that also makes sense, but I still believe it was a little bit early. Bishop c4. So a few moves were played. And here my opponent gave me a clear occasion to push d5, which looks very dangerous. If my opponent can play bishop b7, then we get a normal isolated pawn position, which is perhaps good for me. I mean, I can put my rook here, my queen there, perhaps bring my bishop to have some mating ideas. Later, my knight to e5. This is just a normal position, but this was a very important moment to calculate d5, which is a concession because, of course, with white I'm playing an advantage, and by playing d5 I'm completely, let's say, equalizing the pawn structure. And if I cannot prove my advantage with my dynamic play, then I'm not going to win that game. So d5 had to be calculated, and a few things I had to see. So for example, e takes d5, knight d5. If bishop b7, I'm going to take the bishop pair, and this is already a success. So this I did not calculate much more, because the bishop pair is a success, and I'm happy if I can get that. What I had to see is that after knight takes d5, I had bishop takes d5. If the rook goes to b8, I'm going to trap bishop g3. And if rook a7, I have rook takes c8 and bishop e7. So this is an important tactics in the game. And after d5, in case of knight takes d5, then I would take with the bishop, still attacking the rook. E d5, bishop e7, queen e7, knight d5. The best square for the queen here is d8, because if it goes, for example, to d6, this is going to be a very bad surprise, since queen takes e6 is met with knight e7 check. So queen d8. And this position is actually quite important, because again, if my opponent manages to complete his development with knight e5, bishop b7, then he's going to solve his problems. But here I have a very important move, which is rook c6, and it's just actually winning the game because black is completely paralyzed. If my opponent plays rook b8, then I'm going to play rook d6 and look at the black pieces. The queen can't even go to e8 because of rook e1. Let's say rook e8, knight d4 to go to c6. And this is just a total disaster for black. For example, bishop d5, queen d5. There could be some lines like this, but in the end, black is going to lose material on the d file. And after rook c6, rook d6 is a very deadly threat. So my opponent played knight c5 because this actually happened in the game, and I just took a free pawn on b6. And of course, the position was already, after just 19 moves, completely winning. So what does it mean? That means that even when we have a positional game like this one, typical isolated pawn position, when there is a tempting move, you should push your calculation. If one move is tempting, well, you should not play it too quickly because, well, you may miss that your opponent is going to solve his problems easily. You should definitely try to push your calculation as much as possible. I mean, when I calculated until here, I was really not sure until I saw that move rook c6, because if bishop b7 can be played, I'm really not sure I have any advantage here. So I was really wondering whether I should play d5 or not, but I really forced myself to think as much as possible. And when I saw that rook c6 was so strong, I decided to go for d5, and that brought me a full point against Artur Yusupov. So that was a positive example of when to and how to make concrete decision and concession. I'm going to show you a second example. This another game of mine, but this time not a very positive example, since I drew a winning endgame. That was played many years ago. I was white against Timothy Ends. That was played in the French youth league, so for players under 16-year-olds. So you can imagine that that was a very long time ago. But I had one of the most interesting endgames here, one of the most interesting endgames of my career, actually, although my rating by then was much lower than it is right now. And here I have two choice or two. Well, obviously white is much better because my king is on d4. It's very close to just go to c5 and to completely, black is completely dominated. The queen on c6 is also very good. My bishop, well, we could call it a good one because all the opponent pawns are on light squares. On the other hand, of course, black is very solid, so it is not so easy to break through. But let's say that my bishop on e2 is still better than the bishop on c8. And here I had the possibility to just try to turn around, play a move like queen c5, because that endgame, for example, would be an easy win for me. King c7, I would just play b3, then I would play c4. My opponent would, let's say, take everything, bishop c8, and I would easily get him into zugzwang, for example, like that. Just wait one move, and then bishop c4, and then my king is going to enter somewhere, and that would be a very easy win. But of course, after queen c5, I am giving my opponent a possibility to decline the queen actions and play queen d7. Instead, I could have played queen d6 check, but I did not dare to make that move, because if it does not win, then if it doesn't win after queen takes d6, then of course I would be very disappointed to make a draw without even trying more. But actually, more calculation would have led me to the right decision to play that move, queen d6 check. Here my king should go to e5, bishop b7, and actually here I'm breaking through with b3 and c4, as we saw before. So d4 is not really a move here, because I can play, for example, well, maybe even c5 and then queen takes d4, or maybe just bishop d3 to block everything, and this is just an easy win for white. So best for black would be to take and perhaps play bishop f3, bishop, which I cannot take, otherwise black is going to queen his f-pawn. Bishop d3. My opponent can try to harass me because I'm not sure about this pawn endgame. This is the critical maneuver. I mean, if bishop f1, bishop c6, this is not going to be easy to break through. And this is actually what made me afraid in the game, that here I could not find a forced win. I should add that bishop to e4 is a forced move here, because if bishop c6 to defend against c takes b5, now this is a very easy win, because I'm going to play c5 and I'm going to bring my bishop there. And bishop d5 is never possible because of bishop takes f5. So that would be an easy win. So playing bishop e4 to try to force my bishop to f1, so it cannot so easily attack the e6 pawn, is very smart. This is a position that we could have reached by force after queen d6 check, and of course it required a long calculation. I have to take if I want to play for a win. King takes e4, b takes c4, king d4. For example, well, king c6 might be a smart move. King takes d6 is the most natural one. King takes c4. I didn't want to enter such a pawn endgame, which I didn't know if it was winning or not, but it's actually a pretty easy win for white, since I'm dominating the position and I'm going to win the g pawn. Here black could have played e5, but after f5 it is not really improving his situation. If king is 7, king d5, and I'm winning the pawn. Instead of king takes d6, black could have tried to lose one tempo like that. But anyway, so f5 now, that would be the trick, that the king is not on e7 but d7, and black would be in time to get my b pawn and to make a draw here. Okay, and it's going to be a draw, obviously. So not f5, but just king f6, and I'm going to pick the other pawn that way, and now my opponent is not in time. I'm going to actually queen my f pawn with check, and that's going to be an easy win. So anyway, that was the right moment to take a concrete decision, and instead I started to, well, just turn around, give checks, and do nothing. And well, at some point, simply nothing was happening, and at some point, well, the game ended in a draw because I could not. I did not have any good opportunity to exchange queens anymore. And well, I tried. I played 99 moves in total, but the game was a draw. So a very fascinating endgame, I think, after queen d6 check, which deserves a lot of calculation. So when you feel like you probably reached the momentum to make a concrete decision, I understand that that endgame is extremely complicated to calculate until the end. But that same reasoning applies to much simpler position than when you have an opportunity to make a concrete decision. You should. That's the moment where you should spend your time and not try and, I mean, not like great shook, for example, with spending half an hour for each detail. You have to be able to play a few normal moves fast enough so that when you reach a concrete decision, like I had in that game, you have enough time to calculate as much as possible and collect the point. So there are, of course, many more examples of that I don't have time to show in that video. You can read more in my book about avoidable mistakes, about concrete decisions and prophylactic decisions, and so on. But these are, I think, two good examples of, also two good strategical examples on how could white win the game. So remember to really, when you feel like you reach the momentum, well, do not think like, okay, I'm going to have another chance within a few moves. A momentum is a momentum, and at this moment, you should really give yourself 100% and calculate as much as you can. So I hope you enjoyed these two examples and third video, and do not miss the fourth one that is coming right now. Hello and welcome everyone. In this and last video, I'm going to try to tell you a bit about fighting spirit during your chess games, and then I'm going to give you a few tips on how to work on your chess. So first of all, I'm going to show you two games of mine that looked like dead draws and that I managed to win after pushing and pushing and pushing, just to show you that, well, you should try to provoke mistakes from your opponent, well, until it become impossible. But you should, you should play. I mean, the games will talk by themselves. So this is my game against Master Vasilis, played in the Greek league a few years ago. The first 20 moves are irrelevant because we just basically exchanged every piece. That was a morning game, and I was not particularly against making a draw. And we entered this opposite colored bishop endgame, which is just a dead draw in many ways, but I have a slight advantage since my bishop is a little bit more active. Of course, that should not be enough to win the game at all. Here, first of all, my opponent decided to give away one pawn and play bishop a4 and allow bishop c1. He did not want to play something like that and just have passive pawns, but I'm not sure it was such a great decision because, well, if he really wants to, maybe later he can activate his bishop anyway. Of course, I have a plan, which is to try to bring my king to the other side, but it's a very long plan. White could even one day sacrifice the f2 pawn and bring the king to c2. I mean, this is a draw simply. But my opponent decided to activate his bishop, which I was not surprised about, but I was more surprised about the next move, bishop c6, because I thought it was much more clever to give away the a3 pawn and to keep a very solid setup on the queen side, and then, well, white just waits somewhere here. And I do not think that black can break through. Of course, I have an extra pawn, but there are double pawns. I do not think that, I can try to bring my king somewhere, even somewhere there, but white is going to put his king on e2, and, well, I'm not sure I'm able to do very much in this endgame. But anyway, bishop c6 was played. This is still a draw. I took on b2, obviously. King f8. My opponent just waited. I kept my bishop on d4 to keep an eye on the f2 pawn. I came with my king, so I needed to play c6 in order to go to b6. Now, unfortunately, I cannot just play king a5 and king b4 because bishop b5 will be problematic. So I started with a6 in order to play king a5, king b4, and not allow bishop b5. And here bishop c8 would be a dead draw, I believe. So when I take on a4, bishop takes a6 comes, and, well, I don't think I have any chance of winning that game. But instead, bishop e8 was played, and at this moment I started to feel like I do have chances to win the game. I played king a5 and king b4, so now I gave the pawn back, but you can see that my bishop is perfect on d4 and my king is a monster on b4. Still, opposite colored bishops are very often just a draw. As a good thing is now my opponent cannot just play bishop b7 because after a5 he cannot hold both pawns. So white is already losing one pawn here. White, he played king d3, which is the smartest move because f2 is a double pawn and it's the least important pawn in the position. I took on f2, bishop b7, a5, bishop c6, king b3. So you can see that the bishop is a little bit stuck to the defense of the c4 and a4 pawns. Now I try to get around with my king. And now my opponent played actually a very natural move, which is a losing one. He played king e2. He should instead have just allowed me to get around with my king and play it. But he should just have waited for this time. He should just have forced my pawn to move to dark squares and then block everything on the light squares. And there is not much I would be able to do in that position. That would just be a draw. But instead, my opponent thought it is very illogical to allow my king to the other side of the board, which definitely makes sense. And he played king e2, but now after king c2, my king is going to d4, and this is already the start of serious problems for white. Bishop a6, white has to wait. Bishop c1. Now I just push my h-pawn. h4, that is a great move. You're going to understand why very soon. King f2 and g4. If fg4, then king e4 should be quite an easy win for me. I have a passed pawn here, and I'm going to, for example, play my king to f4, push my pawn to e3. If the king goes to e2, then king g3. If the king goes to e2, then king e4, king d3, and I'm going to push my pawn. That's an easy win. So hg4 has to be played, but this extra pawn, well, not extra, now the material is equal, but this new pawn that white got on g4 is very irrelevant because it's completely blocked by my own chain of pawns. Bishop f4, I want to play h3. And definitely my opponent should have prevented h3 here and played king g2. I would have played king e3, h3, I would have taken on f3, and I'm winning a pawn now because the bishop is unable to hold all three pawns. So for example, bishop b7, I'm just going with my king, and I'm going to win one of these pawns, and that should be quite an easy win for black. Instead, my opponent played bishop a6, and now it became very easy for me because I could get my pawn to h2. Well, actually, I could even get better than that because here I got the Zugzwang position, the bishop cannot move, so the white king has to move, and now I block the white king a little bit more, and all I have to do is to go with my king and collect the f3 pawn, and now all the white pawns are falling, and this is just a dead win for black. So that means even when you have the slightest possible advantage, you should try your maximum to play for a win. As long as your opponent has a possibility to make mistakes, you should try to go for it. Another example, very similar, is my game against Jean-Marc de Graaf, played at the Bundesliga a few years ago. So again, the first moves are very irrelevant. It was an Alapin Sicilian, and we basically exchanged every piece. I was black. I was actually also very tired because I played that game in the afternoon and had a very long travel in the morning, so I was definitely not against making a draw. And it looked like my opponent was also happy with the idea of making a draw because he was trying to exchange everything. Around that moment, I went to my captain. I said, look, I know that you told me before the game that you would prefer me to play for a win if I can, but my opponent is just exchanging everything, so you understand that's going to be a draw. And he told me, well, if it's a draw, it's a draw. I appreciate that you tried, but okay. If you have to make a draw, you just make it. So I thought a few moves later the game would be a draw, but anyway, played a few more moves. And here my opponent decided to enter a pawn ending, which was not necessary to enter. And I decided I should play on a little bit because I have a little space advantage here. If f e4, of course, king e5, king e4. I have a little space advantage, and I should try to see if I can take advantage of it. And now my opponent already made a decisive mistake with g takes f3. He should have kept a healthy pawn structure playing king takes f3. After gf3, g5, this is already a very big problem for white, who is paralyzed on the king side, and has difficulties to push his majority on the queen side. B3, B5, quite an important move. So after C4, the pawn is going to be very weak. I'm going to start pushing my pawns there, and then I'm going to collect that C4 pawn. So my opponent just waited. I played H6, King D3. I played F5, King E3. And here actually I made a big mistake. I should have played H5, which would be in a way very similar to the game. Instead, I've played King D5, and I gave my opponent an opportunity, according to the engine, to save the game with H4. G4 would be very bad because white would take and play H5, and then after C4, white would somehow give away C4 pawn and collect my two kingside pawns, and I would lose the game. So I would have to take King F2. It looks very good for black, but for some reason, white is just in time here to make a draw according to the engine. So H4, which I completely missed, would have saved the game. Instead, when I played King D5, my opponent played F4, which was the move I was hoping for when I played King D5. And after G4, it's now completely over. HD4, FG4, King D3 to play C4 check. H5, C4, take, King D6, and after King E3, H4, my opponent just resigned because he realized that he is unable to push his two pawns. For example, if F5, King E5, C5, take, and I'm still catching the C pawn. If King F2, just King C5, I want to take and come back, and if F5, just King D6, and then King E5. This is just an easy win for black. So actually quite a smooth victory from a position that looked like a dead draw after 20 moves. So that means when you have the slightest advantage in a game, or when you have a very slightly higher rating than your opponent, or when you feel like positive pressure is on your side, you should, before agreeing to a draw, you should make your opponent play a few moves and see what's going to happen. That's definitely, first of all, you're going to learn a lot about chess, because it's very, well, you're not learning anything when you make a quick draw. And secondly, if you could study your endgames pretty well, then maybe it's going to bring you a few points, as it brought me in the two games which I showed you. Anyway, to finish with this video series, I'm now going to show you a very fun example, a game of mine played at the World US Chess Championship in Belfort in 2004. So I already showed you one game from this tournament.
is it so hard to let you go? To let you go. So why is it so hard to let you go? To let you go. So why is it so hard to let you go? Let you go. Let you go. So why is it so hard to let you go? Let you So why is it so hard to let you go? Let you go.
I'm headed to the bottom of the bottle. I've been drowning, I've been floating away. Every other dollar that I got, and then I probably went and it away. I ain't f***ing okay, I ain't liking it, babe. I don't even wanna talk, I'm just smoking my haze. I've been stuck in my ways, I've been stuck here for days. I've been staring at the clock as the radio plays. I'm enslaved. Yeah, rolling another, I'm stuck in my seat for the whole control of my speech. Yeah, I've been trying to get off this couch for a minute and a whole damn week. No kidding, I'm skinny, I cannot eat. Got a million cause that depend on me. Yeah, every friend in my family, from a girl, every fan I meet myself. I'm too on till I'm too off. Come down, make new thoughts, like jumping off of that rooftop. Hold my camera when I do not to make moves based on my mood drops. Like who's lost? Like who's lost? It's yo, stop, steadily killing me, running my brain full of shame, I don't wanna lose it. Full of stage, trying to run my pain. I see the sun coming out of that rain. My team really not tame, I'ma never slow down, I'ma never behave. Stuck inside this prison, inside this cage, it's taking over.
ripping harder, more less. Never stop, no rest, till the stress is breath in my chest. Till it's diamonds wrapping my neck, progress to a god from a god mess. Hopeless, more tests, more blessed. Dug deep down, trying to find my best. Find a beast, had to kill a conquest, I'm next. I'm too on till I'm too off. Come down, make new thoughts, like jumping off of that rooftop. Hold my tempo, but I knew enough to make moves based on my mood drops. Like who's lost? Like who's lost? It's yours, steadily killing me, running my brain full of shame, I don't wanna lose it. Full of stage, trying to find my pain. I see the sun coming out of that rain. My game really my game, I'ma never slow down, I'ma never behave. Stuck inside this prison, inside this cage, it's taking over. I'm a slave for you.
to leave this town, cause lately I've been feeling down. The cold nights just don't feel the same. Oh, like my life inside a car. Hit the button, drive real far. Put that record on me, like, oh, I'm dreaming of you. I dream of a new night. Fight in the dark till we see the sunlight. My love, it's you and I. Cross close and could ride this fire. So reach for the stars, cause we're aiming high. You can't wait to see me now, cause lately you've been feeling down. You lay awake alone at night. Oh, like your life inside a car. Forget the world and drive real far. Put that record on again. Oh, my love, it's you and I. Cross close and could ride this fire. So reach for the stars, cause we're aiming high. I'm dreaming of you. I dream of a new night. Fight in the dark till we see the sunlight. My love, it's you and I. Cross close and could ride this fire. So reach for the stars, cause we're aiming high. I can't wait to leave this town. I can't wait to leave this town, cause lately I've been feeling down. I can't wait to leave this town, cause lately I've been feeling down.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through eyes covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything. Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush. Take my eyes open to reality. Why can't you just let me eat my weight in glee? I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in their cradles, profanities. Some days I feel skinnier than all the other days. Sometimes I can't tell if my body belongs to me. I love everything. Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush. Content, hold your breath and feel the tension. Devils hide behind redemption. Honesty is a one-way gate to hell. I wanna taste consumption. Breathe faster to waste oxygen. Hear the children sing aloud. It's music till the wick burns out. Be carefree lately, yeah. Just picking up daisies. Got one too many quarters in my pockets. Counting like the 4-leaf clovers in my locket. Untied laces, yeah. Just tripping on daydreams. Got dirty little lullabies playing on repeat. Might as well just ride around the nursery and count sheep.
dreaming in the dark. We are nothing more than dust. Search but you stay lost. We are reaching for the stars, but we're making this too hard. And I wonder where you are. Mysterious, that's the part you always show. 'Cause you're too curious. Maybe you should take it slow. Mysterious, that's the part you always show. 'Cause you're too curious. Maybe you should take it slow.
In the first video. That was the last round. Nothing very important. We were playing like around board, maybe 15 or maybe for place 20. No, nothing really important. Anyway, that game had gone very well for me over the board, but my opponent was playing very fast and very quickly. I had to play with 30 seconds versus more than 1 hour. And at some point I collapsed and white became completely winning. Here, white played bishop takes on g7. And well, I was about to resign because I'm losing my queen. If queen g7, then it's rook c7. I took with the king on g7, rook c7 check, and now I saw that this fork is coming and it looks like the game is completely hopeless. Well, it should be hopeless. But instead of resigning, I saw a very last trick that I wanted to try, and I did not regret it. I played king g4, pawn takes e5, d2. Here there would be many winning moves for white, king g2, rook c4 check, queen d6. For example, queen d6 would be a nice one, with the idea rook b1, king g2, and if d1 queen, just queen g6. I mean, there would be many easy wins. King g2 is also just a mate. I mean, many easy wins for white, especially when white has more than 1 hour on the clock and I'm playing on seconds. But my opponent played in 1 second rook d7 just to stop my d pawn. And now a very bad surprise came to him that after king f3, the position is a draw. Because white has no check. The only available checks are queen takes f5, which is irrelevant. Rook d3 also irrelevant because I would take it and then win the game. And there is no way to prevent rook b1. The only move here is h4 or h3, which would be pretty much the same. King d3. There is still no check because the pawn on e5 is preventing queen b8 check. So it's really a study-like position. King f1 only move, king f3, and we are just forced to repeat moves. We could call it some sort of robbery, because I should definitely have lost that game. But anyway, I was quite happy with the small trick I found in the end with king g4 and d2. I mean, it is, although I would deserve to lose that game, it's always pleasant to manage such, to save such a miraculous health point. So anyway, what I want to say is that as long as there is a possible trick, you should go for it. I know that this is something everybody does. If you know that there is still a trick, you're going to do it. But very often, when your opponent looks dead lost, I think most players tend to forget. I mean, tend to get depressed and do not look for a possible way to to trick the opponent. And sometimes even in the worst possible position, like this position which I had, with a full extra queen for white, sometimes there can be a last trick, and you should try it, even if it works only 1% of the time. It is still a good thing for your own results. So all I would add to this 4 videos is that obviously you should work on your chess. You should work on your openings. So if you're able to work yourself using games and chess engine, that is good. It is even better if you use chess books and videos or chess analysis, because, well, you have things that are already written by grandmasters. So there is a lot to learn from all the material that already exists. And most important of all, you should find an opponent that suits you very well. That's something I'm explaining, for example, in my book, The Chess Manual of Avoidable Mistakes, that once I insisted too much playing a variation on which I worked hours and hours and hours, but I was losing every game anyway. I could not feel the position. So if you start a new opening and you understand that you do not feel the position correctly, then try to look for a new opening. And finally, obviously, you should, try to catch every information possible, try to follow tournaments online to see what these very strong guys are doing, try to analyze their games. Trust me, in every game, even rapid games played right now at the top level, there is something to learn. And of course, you should work on your end games, because trust me, it is very important when you are playing a middle game to know what kind of end game it is good to transpose into and what kind of end game you should avoid. So chess is a long journey. I hope I gave you many good tips to improve your play, your practical play, and your working methods. I hope you enjoyed my videos. You're very welcome to message me and to tell me what you thought of them. And see you very soon for more chess.com comments, I hope. Bye bye.
Minuten!
smoke. Breathe me in and let me go. Sink to your heart to find you. Open up your eyes till you're blinded by the lies, so you can see what you do. Restless every time we start looking as a lost control. Oh, it's paradise with honesty, but I'm in the dead of the night. Teardrops on the floor. The pain is over. Feel the darkness take control.
I'm walking alone, the streets are empty. The only thing I can see is my own silhouette. I'm getting stronger, step by step. The clock is ticking, but there's no time for regrets. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe, trying to protect your soul. We are heroes tonight.